Apparently we are rolling. Going to share my screen. My name's Mike. Where is the gosh darn share screen? There we go. I'm going to share my screen. And you know what? I'm going to present. My name's Mike Waite. This is the OpenShift Commons Briefing Operator Hours, and we are super excited here today to have our very highly energetic rock star best buddy, Scott Johnson, who's the Senior Director of Product Management over at Synopsys. Scott, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for that warm and welcome introduction. Much appreciated.
Well, I couldn't help but squeeze that in because as we got on the call it the bridge here a little early, and I was like, geez, that's a pretty nice white background you got there. And then Ferris, who I'm also going to introduce in a second, has a similar type of background. Then you took yours off, and there's like this giant Iron Maiden poster
Right.
flag on the
Yeah.
wall, and I was like, wow, where's you got a ponytail going on there. How many guitar picks have you collected from Iron Maiden concerts in the day, Scott?
I've always wanted to get one, but I've never been in a position to catch one. I was really close when the bass player's side project played in Atlanta to like 100 people, and I was literally up in front and had an opportunity to get a picture with him. But I was not able to get a guitar pick, I think, or in this case, one of the guitar players, some little 10-year-old kid snatched it away from me.
Oh, no way. What do you like kick you in the shins and
He gave
like
me a
snatch
kick
you?
and said, "This is mine,
You
Grandpa."
you remember when we were kids, just a little sidebar, because like, I find this pretty interesting. Remember going to concerts as a kid? We didn't have any money, and it was like trying to figure out how to get seats and like, can you even get somewhere near on the floor so you could potentially get a drumstick or something? And like
Yep.
lately, over the last 3 or 4 years, whenever I've gone to a concert, I basically just go all in and I buy like front row center. I'm like, just give me six of those. I wish we could have done
Right.
that when we were 17.
Yeah, and the tickets, the prices have changed a bit since then too, right? That was when tickets were maybe 10 or 20 bucks. Now those are like the $400 ticket or
600.
maybe more. 600,
600.
yeah. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
want to shortchange those. So
Yeah.
depending on the venue and whatnot. So well, with some of the bands or some of the entertainers, right? They put on a heck of a show, so it's well worth. If you're gonna go, you might as well enjoy it because
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with COVID, right? Everything's been shut down, so it's gonna be nice when some of those things open up, and we'll probably see. I would expect there's gonna be a lot of new music and books and stuff coming out really soon as folks that have been holed up for a while have been sitting around, hopefully being creative.
It's only been about what, 18 months since this whole thing started. And I got to
Yeah,
tell you,
exactly.
I'm looking forward to eventually going back to the office. I miss the cafeteria, you know, like
Right.
getting up and keeping you in a routine. I find that by working from home all the time now, we kind of like get up and you kind of forget about your own personal time, and then you're drinking coffee. The
Yep.
next thing you know, you're turning on your laptop, and then it's like 1:30 and you haven't had lunch yet. And it's just I like
Right.
that routine of being in the office building, going down to having the chef whip up, the whatever they do for breakfast, and then, the fantastic lunches that they made. And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to getting back to business as usual. So concerts,
Yeah.
you know,
There's something to be
cafe,
said for that for sure, right? I mean, I remember one of the cafeterias where I worked, I could just go in and I would just kind of do like one of those, and he knew exactly. He was like, he wants a double chicken wrap
yeah,
with lettuce and broccoli,
yeah, yeah.
and which was an
But
odd
not,
combination.
but not the iceberg lettuce. It's got to be romaine.
Yeah, it's
There's
romaine,
no,
chopped romaine. Yeah, no
yeah.
iceberg, no big
So
hunks.
But now you're not a cafeteria worker. You're a senior director of product management at Synopsys. So what does that mean?
So it means I take all the arrows and all the blame. No, what it means is we really focus on how do we drive the how do we understand and drive the requirements, the needs of the customers and the users in the space in which we're in, which is application security? How
Yep.
do we drive that, into our vision and strategy so we can meet the needs of, the enterprises and other organizations as they really try to figure out, how do we secure this world, right? It's been pretty crazy what's been going on, not just with COVID, like we talked about, but the impact of cybersecurity. So from a product management perspective, it really does go down to the fundamentals of understanding the market. Where's the market going? The old adage that Wayne Gretzky used to use about, he follows where the puck is going, not where it is. We have to do that in product management and try to make some bets, right? What's
Yeah.
evolving with API scanning, and what are the new languages and frameworks that you need to support? And then driving that into the product requirements and executing, right? Being able to come back to customers with the features and functionality that enables them to do their jobs effectively and efficiently, and meet their needs for their organizations. Which, I mean, they're feeling. I have a lot of friends that work at some of the various large enterprises in the space, and they're feeling the pressure, right? Every day when you hear about, solar winds and Colonial Pipeline and meat packing plant, right? What the heck? Meat packing plant, JBS got hacked. It's like, what in the world, right? It's meat.
I want to ask you about that because honest to gosh, I have some opinions, but I want to hold that thought for now.
Yeah, all
Um,
good. Yeah.
we have Ferris Yassin on the phone. Ferris is a good buddy of mine. He's been here at Red Hat for many years, and Ferris is the global alliance manager for software vendors here at Red Hat. Ferris, how are you today?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mike. I was listening to the conversation and I even forgot that we are just talking about business stuff. It was so
Well,
fun and exciting thing.
well,
So
I,
that
I
was
have a,
great.
when we did the dry run with Scott the other day, you guys were know I was on PTO and I was in my pickup truck driving around northern New Hampshire searching for fireworks for an
Right.
event.
Oh, that's right.
But I could tell that uh, we have some pretty good chemistry and synergy here. I don't think we're going to have a hard time running out of things to talk about today, but I did want to I did want to get to you. So what do you do here for the company, and tell us a little something about yourself, Ferris.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I'm Iron Maiden fan. Always been since I was way back when. And in fact, I was surprised to know that they still have the concerts. So I'm not as strong fan as I used to be, but I would love to go with Scott and you might maybe we can go our threesome conference.
I
Big.
can't. I cannot wait. Cannot wait. Maybe around KubeCon's coming up in
There you go.
October, right?
And
Maybe there'll
yep,
be a
and
concert in
November.
LA, and maybe
There
we
you
can
go.
like get
Definitely.
together like early or stay after it. And we can go. I don't know. I haven't even looked for concerts in 18 months, but that would be cool if we could
Well,
go see like
that would be
Motley
a
Crue.
task afterwards.
I heard like Motley Crue and Styx are going on tour.
Wow.
Motley Crue.
Sticks
Wow,
and the crew.
Yeah.
nice. So wow. All right. So as you can see, we can go all day talking about all these things. So let
Right.
me get to your question, Mike. So what do I do for Red Hat? So I manage the alliances that we have with our top tier security partners, which is in this case is Synopsys. So I work very, very closely with the Synopsys team in providing ways that we can help our customers be more successful in the implementation of DevOps and the pipeline in the DevOps. And that's why we keep referring to it in Red Hat terms in DevSecOps, which is an industry standard now. And we try to bring security into the mix of DevOps. Now, a lot of the times we hear from our customers that, developers and operations work in this area, then they come in, and after the code is done, they go into security. Security is gonna yay or nay the code, and this is gonna bring the cycle way back in and make it that much longer for them to deploy the code. And today, in the agile world of things, we really can't wait that long for code to be coming into market. So we want to do the shift in security lift, so to speak, and basically taking it from after DevOps and put it in the middle or even before. So we have worked with our partners in the security world to go in and secure the code and secure the containers after they're deployed in OpenShift. Now, in OpenShift, obviously, it's a very strong system built on Red Hat, Linux. It takes care of the security in the infrastructure. It takes care of the security of the environment. But once you build those containers, we wanted to work with our partners to secure them. Now, we have built a lot of blueprints that would talk about the DevOps world and how it progresses. And we kind of defined how our security partners work in 9 areas that are important to security. We defined them into 9 specific regions, so to speak. And that basically would be application analysis, identity and access management, compliance, network controls, data controls, runtime analysis, audit and monitoring, and remediation. And when we defined those areas, what we set out to do between me and Dave Muir and Aaron Levy, if you guys are familiar with our team, we set out in the beginning of the year and we decided that it would be a great idea to have a security series. And we started back in March, where we started going through the Red Hat security ecosystem, and we provided introduction. We started by providing introduction to the DevOps security topics, and then we went on for each month. We dedicated a topic, so to speak. And this topic, or last month, May topic was identity and access management. So if you were following the show, you would have seen CyberArk was on there. This month we have the app analysis, where Synopsys is our top ISV that do a lot of work with us in the app analysis. So here we are today, and we've been doing those series every third week of the month. And I know that because a lot of your audience, a lot of our audience and our customers have been gone to Summit last week, that's why we kind of shifted it this week. I know that all of our listeners have been there. If you haven't, to have a chance to register and see
we
a
were
lot
told,
of
sorry, Mike, shut it down. They're like, corporate was like giant foot coming down, you know. Yeah.
Well, for good cause, right? They were going into the live events, but they still can't catch him. But we're glad to be here. And next month, I think we're going to be talking about the data analysis, right? So we look forward to seeing you next month in July. But for now, that's where we have with the topic. We're going to be talking to our friend Scott about a lot of things. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Cool, thanks. Glad to have you, Ferris, as well. And so, if anyone wants to stay on top of the security themes that Ferris and his team are putting on with their partners, you can go to the OpenShift site, OpenShift.tv, find the calendar of events, and you can actually sign up and see, you know, which events are being put on by whom, when. And ours are generally Wednesdays at noon Eastern. So, looking forward to having you folks on again here, Ferris. Scott and Ferris, I need to talk about the elephant in the room, okay? Well, there's probably lots, but I'm gonna bring one up. So I've been here at Red Hat, as some people know who follow our show, forever. And I'm as old as dirt. I've been here for 21 years,
Wow.
and we were it was 2002 when my office was started, and there were 12 of us in the office, and you know, back then, there were all these companies that were making, you know, all we made was Linux, right? It was like, you know, Linux was our product, and we were a one-trick pony. And, you know, there were these silicon companies out there, Intel and AMD and others, and they all used software from Synopsys for doing electronic design automation. They call it EDAC, right? And so when I hear Synopsys, I think chip design software, and I think Synopsys is like, you know, buying up everybody else. And I think they bought Mentor Graphics, and they bought all these, but then they went and they bought Black Duck, and and I was like sitting there talking to myself. At the time, it was Joe Gomes, who was who was your, my main point of contact there. Great guy. I gotta text him and see where he ended up. But
Yeah, we love
I don't
Joe.
get it. Like Black Duck Software was based out of Massachusetts, and you guys will know better than me, but like vulnerability scanning, right, for open source projects. I mean, imagine how important that is. You're like one of these big commercial banks, and you're building all your own apps inside your commercial bank, and you're taking all this open source code. And how do you know that there's not like vulnerabilities in it? And I'm gonna do a really poor job here, but Black Duck was like, no problem. Our vulnerability scanning stuff will make sure that all your open source components will be good, so you can roll out secure, supportable software for your commercial bank. How is it that is that what makes Synopsys a security vendor? Is it the Black Duck acquisition, or is Synopsys changing their focus? Are they no longer designing software for Intel to design cores and sockets? How does it like? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so look, I think that's a great point. And when you look at kind of I guess the evolution of Synopsys and that history that you mentioned, the rich history in silicon and focus there, and the success, right? The success of the company. I think what they really identified was the importance of software and securing software, and how it's so important to enable trust in software over time. And so the company, the executive team has made a strategic and very focused investment and commitment, right? It's really about commitment. It's beyond investment. It's about commitment to how you secure code. Going back to, maybe they listened to what I think it was Mark Andreessen that said back a decade ago that software is eating the world. And it is, right? Software is basically part of everything we do in addition to the chipsets. And so that commitment, in addition to Black Duck, so they have built around, and before that, you had Cigital, you had Coverity. So if you look at the pillars of application security, static analysis, open source, dynamic, IAST, Synopsys, and the SIG, we're called SIG, but within Synopsys, our security group, we're very focused on how do we provide the application security holistically in the pipelines, and how it ties in with what we're doing together with OpenShift to really accelerate protecting the code as it's being developed a lot more rapidly and frequently. So it
what
really
is
is
SIG,
beyond Black
Scott?
Duck, and yeah.
What's SIG? Is like let me Synopsys Integrity Group. What
That's
is it?
correct. Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah. So
What, I'm a winner. Okay.
you are a winner, and it's interesting because when you look at what we do, that doesn't really define what we do, because we cover so many areas across really the application lifecycle. And you'd asked about what is Synopsys continuing to do. We just announced about 2 weeks ago the acquisition of a company called CodeDX, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But the continued investment to provide the capabilities for our customers, right? When you think about the direction of application security and the companies, it used to be that it was primarily something that, if you go back to Jeffrey Moore and the crossing the chasm, right? It was kind of the early adopter thing. Yeah, for those that are aggressively writing apps, you probably should do application security. And then what do you do? Do you do static analysis, dynamic analysis, open source? The answer is all of the above, by the way. But that evolution, right, in terms of how that's really evolving, every single customer or every single company today is a software company in one form or another. Banks to Dollar General. So if you're driving through, and I think we were talking about me being from Nebraska, during our initial session. And so if you're driving through the panhandle of Nebraska, you find three things, right? There's a gas station, there's a McDonald's, and now there's a Dollar General. Well, guess what? Dollar General builds a lot of applications, both internal and external. There's a mobile app, right? I guess you could order your Dollar General dollar stuff and go pick it up, right, during COVID. But the point is, every company, really, no matter if they're high tech, financial, retail, there is a security aspect of it because you have applications, because you're interfacing with customers that are using credit cards. A real world example. Now, my wife recently bought a new dishwasher, and she bought it from a small company. I don't even know where they're located. They got hacked. Her credit card was stolen, and it was breached. So we had to go through all the process and figure out what to do and all that. But it just illustrates that no one is really immune today, and that's at the core of it. It really is around the applications and the data.
That's why I wash my own dishes. I stay away from.
Yeah,
I stay away
nobody
from.
needs an
Keep them safe.
IP, right? You don't need an IP enabled coffee maker or
I have I have a dishwasher. I got a ski condo. I got a dishwasher there. I got my summer house in New Hampshire. I got a dishwasher there. I got this house here. I got a dishwasher. They really don't ever get used. Maybe it's because I don't have a whole hockey team of
you cook.
children
Yeah, maybe you don't cook.
like Dave Muir does. But anyways,
Is it not-
that's what's that?
That's another thing we can do with you, Mike, is go to your Colorado condo and then go skiing over there in the winter.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
absolutely.
but what
we'll go to the Iron Maiden concert in Denver, and then
go ski.
to
Hey,
Mike's
one
con.
other thing that I did want to bring into the discussion that also with Synopsys is very big in creating the chips and create the software that would create the chips. And I was reading an article the other day about auto manufacturing, and we have, Synopsys has a big auto vertical that they work with where they have the chips and they create them for the AI for the automotive industry. We at Red Hat working very closely. We have our own center of excellence in automotive. And one of the things that the article was talking about with the intelligent cars coming in and how it's going to lower the insurance rates and lower the accidents. But there is one problem that is really making people stay up at night, and that's the security of the auto driving
The
vehicle.
infotainment
That
systems. Yeah,
exactly, because then if somebody hacks into that, then and takes over the cars, then imagine the type of damage that they could bring in and the havoc they could bring into smaller cities, wherever the infrastructures and so on. So this is, I think, a very important piece where Black Duck and Synopsys can come in and secure that code before it even gets into the chip. And that's a very big area that we've been working on together between Red Hat and Synopsys currently.
Hey,
yeah.
Scott,
Partnership wise, we have a really strong relationship there to help secure the code that goes in cars. If you look at, I mean, it's the evolution of the space, right? Where
Yeah.
is a car rubber and aluminum? Yeah, but it's also code. I think in the latest Tesla, there's like 100 million lines of code. And a good friend of mine who does a lot of talks, TED Talks and things like that, he was jokingly talking one time. He said, "I don't want my automated driving car to run over grandma when I'm backing out of the garage. When it's backing out of the garage, so I can get in the car, right? Because it's
Yeah.
self-driving." So it's a really important. I mean, it ties in with everything we do, especially if you look at that part of the automation. If we really do have self-driving cars, and we do, I've been in one. It's pretty impressive. But if every car is a self-driving car and you have a network that is dependent on, on no latency, right? And if one small vulnerability gets into that software supply chain, that it could impact that infrastructure for all the cars that have to connect. It's kind of funny. So here's a non-security example, but living in Atlanta, we have what's called the perimeter, and it's basically a circle that goes. It's a Interstate 285 goes around. I'm drawing a circle here. That's what that means. It goes around basically Atlanta, and there were some kids or some college kids, I think, a few years ago during rush hour. They DOSed they DOSed the traffic by all going the same speed on the interstate, which backed up everything. And so imagine now in the future, all the software in the cars, automated driving, where probably won't, maybe our grandkids no longer drive, and someone just puts in a stop signal in the middle of rush hour across the entire US or heck the world, right? And all of a sudden one car stops on the interstate and it's total chaos. I mean, we've seen it with the pipelines, the recent pipeline hack with Colonial Pipeline in Atlanta. It hit the region where I live, and my daughter who goes to UGA, she was driving back and she called me. She said, "Dad, there's no gas." And I'm
Oh
like,
no.
ah. I said, "Well, just wait in line or come back home. I guarantee in a couple days, right? There's no gas shortage. It's just the pipeline. I mean, the gas is available. We just can't get it to the
Logistics,
gas
yeah.
stations right now because of the hack." But
So you started talking about that. There were a couple things that you threw out there in your preamble. One was about Wayne Gretzky talking about, go where the puck's going, not where it is. And in computer terminology, they call that speculative execution. And thinking back to like security breaches, you brought up the meat packing plant and the gas line and solar winds and everything else. Do you remember the shell shock and heart bleed bug that was actually
absolutely.
in every computer in the world
Yep.
because
How
of like
about the anaconda virus? How about that one? Right?
it was amazing. I just like it apparently like it started way back in the mainframe where in order to speed up transactions, they were like, well, if I'm a line order cook and I know that someone comes in every day and they're like, hey, I need my double bacon, egg, and cheese, right? And
Mhm.
so they actually handle instructions in advance before the request comes in. Well, if for some reason that request doesn't come in, it gets dumped on the floor. And back then, Heartbleed and Shell Shock was basically just dumping information on the floor because it was locked in a mainframe. And then when x86 came out, and it's like this was, anyways, it was an amazing security problem that was
Right.
addressed. But that's not your space. But let's talk about the meat
But it's
packing
but
plant.
it's all related. I mean, it's all related though, right? I mean, if you look at
Yeah,
it,
sure.
a lot of that generates or it goes back to the software, right? So when you look at lateral movement and the breaches, right? A lot of it is kind of social engineering where, I send you some hacker might, socially engineer your password or, just the old phishing attack. Hey, Mike, can you check out this file? You accidentally click on it. Now you've downloaded something into the system. You don't even know it, and then they laterally move, right? And they find the vulnerabilities in the software. If you go back to like Stuxnet and we won't talk about it here per se, but Stuxnet is a freaking amazing. There's a great documentary on it and some good write-ups, but it's amazing how the lateral movement going from kind of a vulnerability on the Microsoft server side, I think it was, all the way down to the Siemens HMI that enabled them to then get into the system with a USB stick into the nuclear plant. It was amazing, right? But it boiled down to there was a vulnerability in the software. So it's kind of like the nucleus of where, maybe not where the initial hack comes in, but water flows to the weakest point, and as we know, right, and it opens that up.
Yeah. So meat packing plant, pipelines, like I said, I've been here forever. I have a feeling that Linux is a pretty secure operating system. It like how can these companies, and I don't mean to like point any fingers at them, but come on, like what are they running? Are they running their data centers like on laptops in their houses and letting kids like play games on them and download? How does that happen?
Yeah, I
Are
mean,
they not
fundamentally, what?
secure?
Yeah, I mean, well, one is look there, some challenges. I think it ties in with some of the challenges, right? The reality is there aren't enough people in security. I mean, there's a need for education and more expertise at at all levels, right? The pipeline. I mean, a decade ago, I'd say more recently, they realized. I think they were actually advertising for a, a chief security architect or something like that. But there was a time where you would have never even thought, I don't. Why would I need any security people? We're a paper recycling plant. We don't need
Small
that stuff.
company.
We're a pipeline, right? No, what? So, but when you look at it, so what it really boils down to is if you are using software, to even take it up a level, chips and technology. If you have computers, you're using software and you need to secure it. And regardless of your industry, you know, we were talking about coffee, joking about coffee as code, you know, a little, you know, in our preamble the other day. And you know, you think about just walking into Starbucks or whatever and order a cup of coffee, and that's that. But everything they do is software based. They've got over 1,000 developers. They're hiring. If you go out to their job board, because I did just out of curiosity, and like the first jobs that popped up were like security testing engineer, and it's like, wait, what about coffee growing? What about the beans? Well, that's all automated. So if you hacked into their jump cloud process, you could actually possibly laterally move over, and maybe you end up. My wife had. We were in Costa Rica before, like literally when things were shutting down. We almost got stuck in Costa Rica, which wouldn't have been so bad, probably, right? But my wife actually toured the Starbucks plant or field where they're growing, you know, growing the coffee beans, and it's all automated and run by software. So what companies have to realize is if you are a business, security has to be one of the pillars of your spectrum of control and how you expect to really operate your company, right? Because it just it's foundational. It's more than bumpers on cars. It's brakes on cars. What it is.
Yeah,
So
especially nowadays that every time that the security vulnerability is identified, especially in the code where Synopsys really works really hard, is as soon as it's identified, you find YouTube videos it's showing you how you can expose that vulnerability. And then
right.
if you're not fast enough, and the speed is part of the how you're going to be able to come ahead of those vulnerabilities. Like I remember like the WannaCry vulnerability or the ransomware that came out.
Yeah,
And it was a
WannaCry.
long
Yeah.
story. That's a very sad story. It came in from the NSA, and then somebody stole the tools and exposed it. But Microsoft knew about it, and then they put the patch. But the people who are using the Microsoft servers when really either weren't aware of the patch or they thought they could delay it. That's the ones that were exposed the most, right? Because even though that they posted it, and then you have people that had Twitter accounts and YouTube that show you exactly how to hack it and hack into some of the companies, and a lot of companies fell victim to it. So speed
Yeah.
is important, and the knowledge of the black hat exposures, I guess, becomes in very, very easily nowadays versus how it used to be in the past.
Well, I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, speed. I mean, we think about the challenges. I mean, just go back to like when did the first iPhone actually come out? Like 2007 or 8? It seems like it was a lot longer than that
I
actually. 'Cause it
was
seems like we've
always been
always
with
had,
us.
right. Wasn't I in college or in high school with an iPhone? The answer is no. But so if you look at just over the last decade, right? Think about how many companies now have mobile apps that had none just a few years ago. Now they've got hundreds, and the number of applications. A customer that I worked with quite a bit and became friends with their AppSec team. I remember when he emailed me, he said, "Hey, you won't believe this. We just crossed over scanning our 3,000th application." And I was like, wait, what? You guys have 3,000 separate or distinct applications or different code bases? And he's like, yeah, isn't that amazing? And I'm like, God, how do you even keep track of that? And then if you look at the evolution that's happening there too, is what's an application today? So look at the foundation and some of the things with OpenShift when you're looking at, you know, microservices, components, and the pipeline process for application security. The speed that you just talked about, where there was a day, and this kind of goes back when you had just a handful of apps, like, you know, I'm going to scan the app, and you'd have like, you know, one guy or one lady, and they would run a scan, say Coverity back in, you know, Coverity back in say 2010 or something, and maybe it takes 2 days to scan the million lines of code, and that was okay, right? And here's a bunch of stuff. And I remember distinctly, I was with a customer on location. It was actually well, I won't mention the names, but we were on location, we were on their site, and we were talking to their AppSec team member, and he said, "Well, our development team needs this to be very fast." And I kind of nonchalantly said, "Yeah, well, we can do that now in 2 hours." And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, "Hey, man, they need 2 seconds." And then we all laughed, and it was like, yeah, but it's not. That's exactly right. So when you look at, and again, tying this back with what we're doing together from a partnership perspective is, as those pipelines, as the CI/CD pipeline process has sped up, and as more developers are engaging, right, in application security because they have to, it has to be much quicker. And that's a big trend with all the tooling that's out there, not just from a static analysis perspective, but across the board, right, where developers need that insight back right then and there. Because the old way, right, if you give me a report that says, hey, here's 100 critical issues to go fix, the developer has already moved on, right? So he or she has
Yeah.
already moved on. Like, that was like 2 days ago. I've written like another X thousand lines of code. I don't even know where. I got to go, but now I have to go back and look for that. So you really got to, that speed that you were talking about is so important, that balance, and then the quality too, right? Reducing false positives.
And do you think that, I mean, there's no one vendor that's responsible for this speed, right? I mean, like, containers and microservices and, apps are getting, yeah, they may have had 3,000 apps, but they probably were pretty small. Some of them, they weren't like 3,000 databases
That's
by
right.
3,000 different vendors. You got all these other vendors out there as part of this whole ecosystem. Like you take someone like a Jogit, for example, like all their low code, no code, development tools and environment that they provide. It's almost like this whole thing is just like this one big ecosystem is just like continuing to accelerate based on the acceleration of the acceleration. It, it's
Right.
it's really it's really going fast. So it makes sense that, like, if you can't fix a vulnerability instantly, that application might not even be being used by the time you
Right.
might get around to fix it, or it's had so many changes to it that doing a defect repair on something that's three major versions is so yeah, I mean, it's amazing how fast things are going. And
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
like
can
we're
imagine.
accelerating like the universe. They say the universe is actually the Big Bang, if you believe in that or whatnot. But the explosion, right? We're accelerating faster, and software is like that. And technology, like a friend of mine had another quote. He said that technology and software in particular is expanding at a rate that is unfortunately faster than our ability to secure it. Like,
Yeah.
dang, that's like, Nostradamus thinking, right? Or like big brain,
Yeah.
um, kind of things. But we can't let that happen, right? We can't give up on that because
Oh,
we see the disruption, right? I mean, the mechanics of how we live today, going to things being all driven by software in so many ways. Like I don't use an alarm clock anymore. My iPhone is my alarm clock. So if somehow the software on my phone doesn't work, right? I mean,
you
then
look forward.
I'll wake up at some weird time. So we've become so dependent on it.
And by the way, Scott, it sounds like you're a big believer in the Big Bang Theory. I just want you to know I'm not, but I am.
I don't know if I believe it. What happened
I
before? What happened before the Big Bang? Right?
I
Right?
Oh,
So
all
I
right,
just wanted
all
to go
right.
on record that I am 100% convinced on the flat Earth theory, though. I mean, all those people that think that the Earth is actually round, they are
yeah.
just they're out of their mind. And I can prove it. Donald Trump and I will be able to
Oh,
prove it.
all right.
Well,
Uh,
What?
here's a really here's a very interesting perspective though. So if you look at molecular biology and how the molecules are typically round, so my table right now, right, it looks flat, but depending on how you look at it, it becomes round. So if we go out 1 billion miles from our solar system and we look back, does does the Milky Way look flat? Does the Earth look flat? Maybe it is flat from that context, but on the planet, like we know it's a sphere because we're standing on. Well, we think it's a sphere, but if you go out far enough, so it goes back to the context, right? And in some ways, that's like software, right? How critical is the software? Well, it really depends on the context and how you're looking at it and how you're using it. If it's your alarm clock, maybe not that big a deal. If it's your pacemaker, probably a pretty big deal. So your perspective on it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk and just like bring the discussion a little bit closer to home with Synopsys, because this is a very
Yeah,
interesting story that I read on your site actually that is very applicable and applicable to the Red Hat relationship. Is one, and I'm not sure, I guess I could mention the name of the customer, but it's on your website, and I invite people to
sure. You
take a
can
look at
mention
it. And
that.
I mentioned it in
Public.
my conference talks, but it's like the financial industry regulating body started to embark on using open source code, and it's a very good story because when they came in to start using open source code, what they wanted to do is they have a person, in fact, it was a lady there that would just go in, look at the code, and okay it. And then soon they start figuring out that as they get more open source code, the open source code dependency start to grow larger. Because if you get some open source code, it'll be dependent on 20 other source code. Then she'd have to go in and
Yeah,
figure this out and try to figure out and approve it. And that became just a humongous task that they couldn't really
right.
keep up with it. And
An
that's when they
exploding
start bringing
universe.
exactly, and then they start
Right.
bringing Black to monitor the or Synopsys to monitor the code, and then okay it. And then if there's a human intervention that's needed, then it'll direct it back to her. But with that, they kind of start like growing exponentially because they're no longer relying on one person or bottlenecks, right? Because it's all automated
Right.
through Synopsys, and now the code can be scanned and verified and making sure that it's okay and it'll be secure code. Now, this is we're talking about the financial industry, so this is very, 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 very important topic for
Yep.
them. And but they were dependent on Synopsys to do this for
Right.
them.
Well, and it's such an important aspect of things that we do, right? So if you look at the portfolio and maybe, we talked about some of the challenges around speed, the tooling, the lack of security expertise, where it's good for people in security, right? Because it drives the salaries up, but there's a need, right, for again going back to the Dollar Generals and companies like that that all have a need for for cybersecurity expertise. And so when you look at some of the things that we're doing, right, from you mentioned Black Duck, so the challenges around open source and our ability to do dependency analysis, binary analysis, snippet matching, and automating that, right? So that manual step, right, can become less needed or at least less critical, or maybe only at very critical points where there just is no other option, right? So you want to automate those things. And like our open source risk analysis report by our cybersecurity center research center came out fairly recently, and we encourage the audience obviously to take a look at that. I think we have a link on it at the end of the session. But we studied, or we audited, I think something like, I don't know, thousands of code bases, 20 industries, and look, everyone's using open source. So your point there is it's exactly right. And here's the kicker on that is everyone's using it and everyone has vulnerabilities, right? There are high level vulnerabilities in the vast majority. It's like 80, I think we said 84%, someone else said 85. It's a high percentage, right? And year over year, that's only been increasing. I think the increase in critical or high vulnerabilities found in the open source things that we looked at,
Yeah.
packages we looked at, was like an increase of 10%. I mean, that's double digit growth. So is it any wonder with more companies using open source, more vulnerabilities, more code, right? So JavaScript, Go, Kotlin. Now you've got all the things happening with infrastructure as code. I mean, so imagine a world now where, because this wasn't the case 10 years ago, where your Helm chart has a parameter setting on the memory aspect from a memory parameter perspective, that if that field is left null, somebody can do a denial of service on your app. And it's like, wait, what? That
Mhm.
wasn't even a thing just a few years ago. Now you have to look for that, whether it's open source or custom code. You've got to look at that from a container perspective. And I think
Yeah.
that's with our partnership, right? I think that's one of the great things about what we've really done together. And I know the team has really been working, I think, since I think it goes back to 2016 or 17, when before I was here, and probably before, well, Mike was long here, as he told us earlier, right? He was here 20 years ago. But
I got to
that
tell you something.
initial What's that?
We've been working with Synopsys since
For 20
2004.
years. Yeah,
For
overall. Yeah.
2004. When I started here, I was a solutions architect, and I took over the responsibility of doing, partner marketing for software partners. Synopsys was probably the most innovative and aware company. And I remember in 2003, I think I told you this on the dry run. I worked with Karen Bartleson. You can look her up on LinkedIn. I'm sure she's still around somewhere. She organized, led by Synopsys, the EDA Consortium, which was to
Wow.
rally all the different chip vendor software companies together and standardize the release cycles so poor product management people like the people who are on your team aren't ripping their hair out of the head, right? Like, geez, I got to support, this version of the software on SUSE, this and this on Red Hat. So they standardized, called the EDA Consortium, and that was led by Synopsys. So, they have a long track record of working with
Yeah.
us, way more longer than since you
Way,
guys bought Black Duck.
yeah,
Yeah.
way longer than since we were really in the security space. So, but I mean, some of the things that we're doing partner wise, and I mean that, so if you go back and look at, what are with those trends and those challenges, what are some of the things we're doing? And it does center around. I mentioned CodeSide a little bit, so we acquired them to provide us with really normalization of vulnerabilities across multiple tools, whether they're our own AppSec tools or third party, because there's so many tools out there to be able to aggregate and correlate those results. So that's a really great investment into our portfolio. But then driving innovations, right? When you think about the shift left and what we've been talking about from a DevSecOps perspective, enabling the ability to do static analysis earlier on commit, right? Looking at infrastructure as code, building that in. So we've got a Sigma scanner that's a component kind of our Coverity offering that provides that second scan if you're doing doing a pull request. So we're doing things like that. A number of other things, fuzzing with Defensics. We talked about the automotive industry and a lot of the different areas there in terms of the protocols that are becoming even increasingly important, as we noted. But then when you look at the partnership we have with, building on, I think the first integration was back in 2017 with Black Duck, and then really building on that, right? So as OpenShift has continued to do it, just evolve and as it often with the Kubernetes distribution and really focusing the product on the developer experience. I mean that really attracts me to what we're doing together in terms of application development, containerized pipelines, and enabling the developers like with Jenkins and the various tools. But then how we built in, right, using the OpenShift APIs in the integration with Black Duck, so you can automatically scan and monitor the open source that's in all the container images that are deployed, and then monitor that. You can do some additional things like annotating and labeling the images in the pods if there are vulns or violations that occur. So, I mean, customers. Here's the thing: it's exactly what we should be doing. Customers shouldn't have to worry about that. We have to be building that in, right? When they go to use a solution like OpenShift, and the fact that all the things OpenShift has done to build security in from a Red Hat perspective, but then partnerships like with us to then bring in kind of the layers of security with Black Duck to really help provide that that secure, right, part of the process as you go through the development cycle is just really powerful, right? You're baking it into the pipeline, and that's a real key component of how we can do our part, right, to help the world in terms of making trusted software.
Hey, I got a little bit of housekeeping here. We are live, although it doesn't feel like we're live. Just having a laptop camera, I guess it doesn't give anyone shell shock. But man, when we can finally get back into the studio in person and do this thing, we can actually see the beads of sweat rolling down people's foreheads. But
And your
Um,
wallpaper will be a topic for discussion. Are those is that fish? I can't tell.
no,
Can't tell.
Global view of the world.
it's
Oh, okay.
flat
The
Earth.
flat map.
Yes, flat Earth.
The
That's the
flat
Okay,
map.
map of the actual. That's what the real world looks like.
I gotcha. To me,
Um,
from
we're
here, it looked like fish.
we're live on YouTube. We're live on Twitch. We're live on Facebook. And you know, if anyone has questions for either Ferris or Scott, please drop them into chat down there, and then the robots will automatically bring those over here and drop them into chat here. We have we have 7 minutes left, and I
Yeah.
know that every time we go over, my producer Chris Shore gets angry and he starts texting me and blah 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 blah. So like,
We'll keep it
given
tight.
that we have 7 minutes left, what what are you gonna what do you want to make sure you cover here today? So when we get off, when we're done, and the phone rings and it's your CMO and they're like, Scott, you were live on the internet for an hour. Why didn't you talk about I don't know, the future of AppSec or whatever?
Yeah. Well, and I think the great thing is, despite all of our fun conversation about the Big Bang Theory and coffee as code, we've hit on a lot of those topics. We've talked about
I know.
the
I've actually been going through the notes and I'm like, man, we're doing a pretty good job. All right.
right. We are actually. I think maybe another thing is when you look at the holistic nature of application. But again, if our CMO came in and he said, well, make sure we talk about intelligent orchestration and how we are looking at or leveraging policy as code across a pipeline and enabling security. So to ensure that the right tool runs at the right time and in the right context. So I use a lot of analogies, as you probably heard from our discussion. It's like, one of them is you don't put up pictures with sledgehammers, right? I mean, you can, but good, we'll probably have some walls, some holes in your wall. So
Yeah.
the point is using solutions like our intelligent orchestration to enable the right tool to run at the right time, and to provide the contextual results back, right? It might go back to Jira, it might flow back into some other ticketing system, and it's contextual, right? And so I think that would be one thing they would want to make sure I noted. I think another thing would be just going back to the partnership that we have, and when you look at not only the Black Duck side, but from the standpoint of looking at Red Hat runtime environments with Spring, JavaScript, Java SE, and all that, and how we've worked together to add interactive application security testing, our Seeker solution, with that to provide real-time vulnerability discovery, where the beauty of it is it provides line code level validation of the issue. So instead of looking around and trying to figure out where is that, it gives you that precision, and you can do that, right? And within the workflow, right? You can do that runtime testing. You can do it ad hoc. It can be manual or functional testing. You can fully automate it, build it into the CI/CD, and then we can, it runs obviously running RHEL and can be fully automated, and it supports, the changes in applications that we talked about, right? You're exactly right, where those 3,000 apps, they weren't all million line Python apps. It was a mix of microservices, cloud-based apps, and that's where the IaaS capabilities within that we offer together provide additional value, and really another layer of security from an OpenShift pipeline perspective, right? Visibility and the details around things like, is that web services call really an issue or not, right? And we can flag that and provide that right back to the developers. So there'd be a couple things I would make sure, and we just did, right, tie those in, that they go back to the strength of our partnership and why companies really need to look at the combination that we're offering and the value of orchestration and security as part of it.
And
So
you guys also are very
go ahead,
important
Ferris.
that you are operator certified in OpenShift, so people can go in from the operator and then they find you right then and there. And then
Yep.
we recently have integrated Black Duck into Rackham, the Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager, which is something that we have released last year. Synopsys has come right in and integrated right into it, so somebody could just click basically and immediately you're in the Advanced Cluster Manager schema.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of integration points that we're doing together, and we're very excited
Right.
for our customers.
So Scott, I feel like we need to do part two. I've got lots of things that I wanted to talk about. Like your Gartner Magic Quadrant
Yeah,
quadrant
we're gonna get to that.
survey. I've got a call to action slide here that I'm going to put up at the end. I'm going to throw this out there though, that like we have a really successful podcast series. It's called Behind the App. We just renamed it. It used to be the Red Hat X podcast series. Now it's the Behind the App. If you want to come on and join us sometime and do a podcast with us, I think we'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do a hangout and talk more about AppSec and where it's going, and debate the Big Bang Theory and how this all got started in the first place. What was
Hopefully we
before the
didn't
Big
scare
Bang?
you too
Gotta be
much.
something.
I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I wasn't updating my Facebook profile while you were talking. This is our call to action slide. You want to speak to this? And we've got, you got plenty of time here to go into as much detail
1
as you
minute.
want in 1 minute.
Well, so just a couple things to take a look at. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing to holistically drive application security, our CodeDX acquisition really brings it all together, right? Whether it's our tools or third-party tools. So definitely go check that out. We didn't get a chance to talk too much about the Gartner Magic Quadrant, but for the fifth consecutive year or time, they skipped a year in there somewhere. But we're a unquestioned leader in the space, as well as the critical scoring or critical capability scores. We can talk about that maybe more in the future. And then I talked a little bit about our OSRA report. Definitely take a look at that. It's got some really good insight around the trends, the types of CVEs that are impactful for probably many of your organizations. And of course, if you do have questions and want to reach out to me, send me a note, reach out, or you can find me in LinkedIn. I'm one of the 1,000 Scott Johnsons, although it's with a K, and I'm in Atlanta, so you could probably find me pretty easily. But feel free to reach out and say hey. So yeah, but anyway, so back over to you. I really appreciate the time. Great, fun discussion. It was an hour that went in like 10 minutes.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. I really want to have you on our Behind the App podcast series. But we'll
think
get
would
you
be a good
scheduled
idea.
for doing something there. So thanks for coming, Scott with a K, as you said.
Got K Johnson.
What's that?
Got K Johnson. Yeah, since
Oh,
there's a
Scott
few.
K. Johnson. I was like, well, that's a
Yeah,
really
no,
weird
not
way of spelling
SKOTT.
Scott.
Although I do
like the
have
Scott,
Swedish. I do have Swedish blood, but
Yeah.
we did not spell Scott. Although I could get creative and it's SKOT. How about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so thanks for joining. This is our another awesome episode of the OpenShift Commons Briefing Operator Hours. My name's Mike Waite. We'll see you again next Wednesday at noon Eastern.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, thanks. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Right on.
Bye.